Good evening. We're going to call to order and confirm the appropriate meeting notices. And we'll check with Jenny about the meeting notices when she arrives. Approval of meeting agenda. If I can have a motion or a motion.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Brian and who seconded? Beth. Okay. Beth. Okay, then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, agenda approved. And approval of minutes from November 17th, 2021. Can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so approved. Public participation. Anyone to have anything to say? Okay, nothing. And first thing under old business, last time we had met, we had talked about there were several questions about the changing over to the new city treasurer and information how we move back and forth since we're doing this now with a different mode of communication. And so Kelsey and Al are both here tonight to share that with us. Welcome. And up to you how you want to go ahead with this. They did send some information to us, some attachments that came with your agenda, so you can refer to those, and welcome, Bill. Thank you. Okay. All right,
Sure,
go ahead.
Well, I can kind of kick it. Oh, and there's Larry too. Perfect.
Okay.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry for my lateness.
That's okay.
Well, you've been demoted, so all right. Thank you. Yeah.
So as Teresa mentioned, most of the folks from the town's perspective, and maybe even from the fire department outside of Jeremy Parker, have probably not met our new city treasurer. It's Kelsey on my Hollywood Square. She's in the top right-hand corner, but I don't know where she is on everybody else's. So Kelsey is our new city treasurer. She's been with us since October, yeah.
October 12th, maybe.
Yeah. So Kelsey came to us from the city of Janesville. So we were able to take a good stormtrooper from the evil empire, right? I mean, I guess the same could be said about me, but I don't know how people think I'm a good stormtrooper or not. But so Kelsey, certainly has a strong background in finance. She was an accountant with the city of Janesville and has already done a wonderful job and worked through our entire budget process with us and beyond. So I think what would be important for Kelsey and I's perspective, and then I'll let Kelsey talk, is if the fire commission has any comments, questions, concerns, or changes to how things were done in the past. Kelsey has been preparing the financial reports that have been a part of the fire commission agendas for at least November and December. I think I did the October ones because Kelsey wasn't here yet, but so yeah, Kelsey, go ahead if you want to, unless I stole all your thunder.
No, I think you did pretty good. Just if there's anything anyone needs from me, please don't hesitate to email or call. I don't know what I don't know. So if I'm missing something, please feel free to let me know that there's something that needs to be on my to-do list. Moving forward with financial statements, I've been doing it the last couple of months and I'll continue once they're ready and available. I've been sending them out to Teresa, Jenny, and Jeremy Parker for them to share with you each month. We are caught up through November, December with being year end. There's a lot of extra ticks and ties to do, so I'm still working through those at this point. But otherwise, I haven't seen any red flags, but if anyone sees any, please feel free to contact me.
Yeah, and I think the question that we may have from our perspective is again, is there something that We want to see that the fire commission wants to see that they're not seeing something that maybe we have an opportunity to do things differently than they were done in the past. Again, that's not meant to be a negative comment against Dan. Dan did a fantastic job, but sometimes when new people come along, they provide different perspectives, and it gives us a new opportunity. The role that we have played in the financial aspect of the fire commission has always been one that's been a bit murky. Dan was a very hands-on guy who preferred to dig into things, and sometimes that was appreciated and sometimes it wasn't. And again, not meant to be a deprecating comment about Dan, but sometimes, the fire commission would say, well, wait a minute, is that really your role? So, it's always been a murky role for the 7-8 years I've been here as to what actually our role is. And I know we've discussed it on multiple times at the fire commission level. Are we bookkeepers or are we analysts? And the response every time we've asked that question is we are bookkeepers. So that intends to be our role moving forward, unless there's a request to be for something different.
Yeah, so it has been somewhat murky. I agree. Since the city took over this role from our accountant Seekert on the decision a few years ago. But I think as a commission, we probably should kind of clarify or at least acknowledge a couple of points. One being authorizing direct communication between the chief and these financials, to make that clear, unless there's a conflict or a certain concern about that. But I wanted to clarify that for both Jeremy and for Kelsey. And any input that the commission has on that, or Al. And a second point would be the likelihood of a relationship with Edgerton, specifically Chief Pickering, on trying to find a melting model in the future, and how the commission sees that, and what's anticipated for as far as communication. And Kelsey needs to be clarified too from the commission on that, and from the city itself.
I didn't catch what you had said about Chief Pickering.
Well, the likelihood in the future, in the next year or so, that we'll be melting into a management model with Edgerton, where finances are one of the key roles, and the communication that's likely needed and authorized between specifically probably Chief Pickering and Kelsey.
Okay.
And Jeremy, for that matter, for the very same reasons probably.
Okay. Why don't you explain what you have tried to set up with Jeremy, Kelsey?
At this point, I believe we are under the understanding that I'm sending over financial statements. I'm open and available for a meeting if we want to start scheduling them monthly just to check in, or if he just wants to check in on a as needed basis. I'm okay with that as well. I can be flexible on my end. So.
Right. She had sent Jeremy an email to set up a meeting, and has been, as she said, offering him the documents that we are being sent. So that communication has been opened up for him, Brian. And so I think we do all agree that that channel needs to be opened up and maintained throughout all of this.
So I think I'm not sure how the commission and the city itself feels in its role in the future, this likely relationship with Edgerton, and how they feel about that direct communication between treasurer and that model that they're trying to create management wise, and look at financials. So
Al, maybe that's something you could talk with them about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree with Brian. That's probably an ongoing to be determined But certainly Kelsey has been involved in a lot of the ongoing fire conversations since she's been here in October, has, is aware of kind of the financial aspects of the potential model. And then if there's a desire to have the city of Milton play a role in the future Edgerton Fire Protection District model, I think that still needs to be discussed and how that would all work out. But I think we're going under the auspices that life will continue as it has been until notified otherwise.
Yeah, and I'm somewhat anticipating that at some point, and we don't know this magic date until we have Edgerton review and bring its terms to a transition model. But I anticipate that at some point Edgerton will take over the books. Not knowing whether that's this year or next year. Or...
Yeah, that's been my expectation as well. But again, that's if there's a different expectation, yeah, that should be communicated.
Yeah, and they do use secret in their books. I don't know how exclusive that is and whether they're totally in control of it or not, but I think part of my point here is that acknowledging or authorizing that communication financially with Edgerton, because I think that probably would be necessary to consider. Are we authorizing so Kelsey understands that she can talk outside about financials? Or what do we feel about that in the meantime?
Well, I guess I would wait until we're ready to move to that. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I don't know that, I mean, they haven't even approved us yet. So that's kind of a step way ahead of where we're at now.
I would say yes and no, because I know that Chief Pickering has already been in communication in the past with Dan. How important that is in the next couple of months, that's maybe not relevant at all, but if you just pick a date out of the thin air where, let's say, Edgerton agrees with a current plan that we've proposed with Edgerton, that they agree to take over and manage January 1st of 2023, just picking something out of the air. Certainly at some point before that, they're going to want to understand the details of the finances prior to that date. So that's why I bring it up, and I think that's why it's appropriate to anticipate and consider some sort of authorizing of communication if necessary.
I think I'm inclined to just kind of hold tight until we get a request from Edgerton at this point and not anticipate or put the cart before the proverbial horse. I think helping Kelsey to understand what our role, what we see her role to be in terms of communicating with Chief right now is important. And not to change the subject completely, but going back to what Al was saying, and what you also had said, Brian, is that I do think it's important for us to understand her role to be doing the books, and that's not to say that there were any negatives other than, and again, no negatives. Let's just say that in my opinion, I feel like with CPERT, it's important for us to have good knowledge of what the financials look like. But at the same time, just keep it to that role, knowing that we will eventually be transitioning. But yes, I see that Linda has her hand up.
Yep. Okay. Sorry, it may have been up for a while.
That's
Linda, in your hand. Go ahead.
in my hand. Okay.
Yes.
I am concurring with Beth. Actually, I think that I'm glad to see that this is on the agenda, and I'm glad for everybody to meet Kelsey. I don't see that anything is really going to change for Kelsey or anyone else in the process that we're taking. She has been taking direction from all of us and came right in from Dan. As far as what we go, at this point in time, we don't have the answers. Actually, we've already worked with Seabrook before, and I don't even know if anybody has pointed that out to Edgerton or not, or if you would even want to, but I just feel like this is premature until we hear back from Edgerton.
I guess 2 strong points. It's going to be necessary at some point, we hope. And because Chief Pickering had been in communication last year with Dan, I think it's inevitable that sometime in the near future, there's going to be some sort of contact. I don't know what those questions might be or requests might be financially. But for Kelsey's sake, I think if she gets any direct contact, what's expected of her? Who should she report the request to? And how should she handle any request for communication on financials with Edgerton?
Why is that going to change right now? She's
Well, the
meeting
irony
with the
is-
fire chief, and Dan was meeting with the fire chief, and everything was, all of that communication was already taking place.
I just wanted to make it clear for Kelsey's sake, what to anticipate and what she believes she's authorized to do.
Maybe I'm looking at this incorrectly, but in my opinion, I would think that Chief Pickering would reach out to Chief Parker, and then Chief Parker would go through Kelsey. But perhaps I'm looking at this incorrectly.
No, that's kind of how I was thinking about it too. I feel like this is, we need to. This is communication that they need to have between them, and I think that they will more than likely figure out the best way to do that for everyone involved.
I agree, and that's why I asked the question. So if it seemed more appropriate to direct it through Chief Parker, I agree. But those players, Jeremy and Kelsey, need to understand what's expected, or what channels they should follow, or what the cooperation level should be or is expected to be.
Okay. All right, Kelsey or Al, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I don't know. Nope. Like I said, we'll just continue on as business as usual. And in the event that there is a contact from somebody from the Edgerton Fire District, whether that's Chief Pickering or somebody from their board that wants information, certainly can share that with the group. And yeah, I don't foresee any issues. We've got a pretty good standard working relationship with Chief Pickering. So,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
sounds good. Thank you. The next one is discussion and possible action regarding interim fire chief job description for Jeremy Parker. If you recall, we met in closed session last time. We talked about some of the components of the job description. I made those additions, corrections, and then sent to you what should be the final draft. You were to look over that before today's meeting. I assume
I have one
that,
question just for clarification and for my sake. In the first section, under identification, the FLSA status exemption, I just want to understand what FLSA is, and as far as exemption status goes, and why it's labeled exempt. I'm just not familiar with it. first page, right near the top of the identification paragraph. So FLSA status labeled exempt.
First page. I don't know where I'm looking here.
The very first page under the interim fire chief.
Oh, I'm on the wrong page. Yeah.
Brian, this is Larry.
Yeah, Larry.
I think it's something to do with the Federal Standard Labor Act, but I'm not positive.
Oh, yes, and yes, it is.
Okay. I'm
Excuse
not
me.
positive, but yeah.
No, that is exactly what it is.
I'm just trying to understand the term exempt, out of curiosity.
So with FLSA, you have exempt and non-exempt employees. For non-exempt, that means they qualify for overtime or comp time.
Yes,
For exempt employees, that means that they don't.
right.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I was trying to look in the paragraphs and I was, okay. Yes.
I think this looks really nice, Teresa, and I want to thank you for putting all this in this format like you did.
Well, I didn't do a lot of it. It was done by I can't pronounce his last name. Whatever. Chief.
Pankowskis.
Thank you. I'm terrible at that. He had done the vast majority of it, and then we had just gone through a variety of other job descriptions from other departments and added a few other things to change a couple of areas. So that was it. I can't take credit for it. But other than that, like I said, I added in all the things that we had talked about changing. And I believe that meets all of the things that we had talked about. Any other questions?
Does our staff have any input on it, Chief Parker or otherwise?
No. No.
Would you
because
like a motion?
Yes, I would.
I'll make a motion to approve the job description for the interim fire chief.
There's a second.
Second.
All in favor?
I
Opposed? All right, approved. Thank you.
guess I better get my hand ready, huh?
Yeah.
There.
Okay. Looking at the next one, we also then asked Jeremy to create a job description for the battalion chief position. And he did that prior to this meeting. That was his job to do. And I sent that out to you as well. And you can see that I felt that he had done a nice job for that. If you took time to look through that, I did not have any questions. It was the only thing I had was a typo. So, and he did that right away. It was a pretty small typo. So, anyway, did anyone have any questions?
I just have a comment, and my comment is, I was really impressed by what he put together in terms of kind of recognizing the complexity of what he's getting into.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
so kudos for putting it together in such a good way.
Yep. No, it was very
Yes.
impressive.
Very
Uh,
good.
It
I have
was.
one question,
Yes.
another clarification. At the end of the job description under item 6, administrative requirements,
Yes.
it states a maximum of 16 hours of on-premise time. What's the relevance of using the word maximum? Where when I first read it, I thought, well, is that a typo? Should it say minimum of 16 hours? So what's the relevance of saying a maximum of 16 hours?
Jeremy?
I believe that was more concerned was if the battalion chiefs were getting paid hourly, they would obviously need permission to work more than that.
That's kind of what I expected the answer to be. I just wanted to understand it to make sure it wasn't a typo.
No, that wasn't
problem.
one of the typos.
Internet at the fire station is very slow tonight.
Any other questions? Larry?
I just wanted to ask and mention, Jeremy, I really liked how either you planned fully, which I'm believing you did, or it sort of happened by your skill and work. The two mesh well, the battalion chief with the chief.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the intercommunication that has to go on and at the points where you need to dialogue with each other, it's in that documentation, and I appreciate that. So
Yeah.
that's important.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And we try to make it so, in case in the chief's absence, it for the most mirrors it.
Mhm. Yep. Okay, if there aren't any other comments, if I could have a motion to approve.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? So approved. Thank you. Okay, the last under old business, we had talked about discussing with each of our entities regarding ambulance purchases. Start with the town board. Brian, do you have anything to
Yes,
comment?
I had raised the question about moving forward on ambulances. Now that there's a plan in place and some additional options on funding with the ARPA money, extended or expanded authorized uses. The model with Edgerton, the understanding is that there would be 2 new ambulances come to the department. We did put off 1 ambulance. I raised concerns about not having a plan in place or funding model in place, but it's different today. I think there are funding resources that weren't available to us before. The question is, do we move forward with 2 ambulances or 1? And I think that comes in the form of the commission making a recommendation to the municipalities and making a formal funding authorization at the municipal bodies, the city council and town board. There was some discussion about the intergovernmental agreement that we've created amongst the 5 of us municipality-wise with Lima, Johnstone, Harmony, Town of Milton, and City of Milton. I guess that's 4, but 2, 5. That intergovernmental agreement describes the responsibility to share the funding for such new purchases based on equalized value shares. But there's also an assumption that that's based on the Edgerton model moving forward. And I'm not sure if it's fair to ask those other municipalities to fund 2 new ambulances at this time, not knowing the Edgerton model. So I think that's one area that I'm not sure of what the expectations are of today. But I do want to encourage moving forward with the purchase of probably 2 ambulances, making the authorization to fund them at municipal bodies, and the need to do that soon, because the Edgerton has an ambulance on order. We can piggyback onto the same deal and order and terms and clone the type of ambulance that they've ordered. And I'll also add that I believe fire staff has already reviewed the specs on that ambulance Edgerton ordered. And from my understanding, and maybe Jeremy, you can kind of elaborate on this, but the only question or concern that came up in looking at the Edgerton spec, currently spec ambulance, was a question of the external rear lighting. So my question was initially, is this something that we wouldn't have wanted to purchase if the Edgerton model doesn't go forward? Would we want a different spec ambulance? So I'm not too concerned if the only question that came up was rear external lighting. So several things. Yes.
There was one more thing. The current backup ambulance, the cot in the back of that would not work with a lift system. So we would have to upgrade to a better cot for the new ambulance. I did mention that to Chief Pickering already, so he is aware of that. And I think that was actually about it as far as modifications that needed to be made.
So he was okay with that discussion about the lift need.
Okay.
Is that right?
Okay. And then the city council chose to have a separate meeting next Tuesday evening to discuss specifically this item rather than piggyback on their this past Tuesday's meeting. So do not have anything to add at this time.
So that's what I anticipate Town of Milton doing also. Be having a special meeting next week specifically for this issue. And to clarify, the focus would be authorizing funding to initially share up to half the cost of the two ambulances, and then work out the details and being made whole by the other municipalities at some future date. If that gets the order in. Does that make sense?
Yes, although you still had questions. You indicated questions about not knowing the decision based on the Edgerton model and questions about sharing the funding with the municipalities.
Long term, I think that comes. But Al, do you have a perspective on the expectations of that intergovernmental agreement for sharing cost?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the biggest question I have, and the biggest concern I have related to this discussion is, you know, what's the intention for the participating municipalities? Are we using the old funding model or the new funding model? It makes a considerable difference, especially for the city of Milton. You know, we're talking about coming up with $250,000 or coming up with, you know, $140,000. You know, depending on which model we use, and the same would apply really for the town of Milton and Harmony as well. You know, I don't have a perspective. To me, it makes sense to follow the new funding model, but I also understand that might come as a surprise to the other municipalities, especially considering we don't know what the future holds. You know, I mean, I know that there's a plan in place, but that plan is only a hope at this point. I wouldn't even call it a plan. And, you know, the question I would ask as a taxpayer is, what happens if the process doesn't go forward and the two municipalities came up with $500,000 and now have two ambulances, when a year ago we wouldn't even buy one?
Right.
That would be the question I would ask. I would actually say it's less clear today than it was last January.
I guess my perspective on moving forward with ambulances is on one new ambulance is a no-brainer at this time. For the town of Milton, it's because of the funding options available. And if there's a plan in place, how we expect to use an ambulance. The question of two ambulances is, would we have ever purchased two new ambulances at once if there's not an Edgerton model exercised or realized?
I think at this time, I would encourage the town board to have a discussion. If you're going to have one next week, and the city council, city council will do so next week as well. And then we would need to decide if we're going to have the fire commission meet again following those two meetings. So if you would contact me, Brian, following your meeting and mine after Tuesday, and we can decide from there.
I want to
Sound good?
stress,
I would think-
that the input from Edgerton has been that we can get in on this order at the cost levels, but that needs to be committed to in this month, January.
Right, and we know that, and I believe Alan and Nisa have discussed that with Chief Pickering too. So,
And I guess I would say, and this is just my perspective, I think the other town chairs need to be involved in a
Mhm.
discussion as well.
yes,
Again, there's a lot of assumptions being made in this discussion. A lot of wishful thinking and assumptions. We're talking about $500,000 while we're still preparing for a referendum that we don't even know when that day is going to come yet. To me, it seems like the cart is way before the horse, but this is the direction that's been given, so we'll proceed accordingly. But we knew we needed a new ambulance in 2019, and there was no desire to purchase one. Now we're going to purchase two, and we have no idea what the future holds. It seems a little premature and dangerous in terms of how that can be perceived by the public. And then to throw on top of that, nearly $750,000 worth of engineering without knowing what the future holds. Now you're really going to have a lot of explaining to do to people when a year ago, we couldn't even commit to purchasing one ambulance. And the rationale then was, we don't know what the future holds. We still don't know what the future holds. And we're talking about spending $1.5 million. And all of a sudden, sure, okay, sounds good. But that's all I have. But I think the other municipalities need to be a part of this conversation. We're making a ton of assumptions here. We're talking about, well, which funding model are we going to use? I don't know. No idea. We'll figure it out. That's,
Well,
that's a scary proposition to me. I mean,
think
it's not how we operate in the city.
Yeah, so the city and the town have committed to holding meetings to discuss this. And I don't see why there isn't any reason why we couldn't fit in a meeting of the other town chairs, just to make sure that we're all on the same page with it going forward. I would feel more comfortable having a meeting with them, because I need some clarification to make sure that they understand too. So after this meeting, we can try to schedule a meeting with all the town chairs. We'll plan on having a meeting next week. And I think we're all, there's a genuine commitment to really take this into consideration and take advantage of being able to get some good pricing on ambulances, because we for sure know that we need minimally at least one new ambulance. So I think that's a really good idea. I don't think anybody would disagree to recognize some savings. I think we just need some clarification on the funding, what funding model we're gonna use. That would be my thoughts, but I certainly want to make sure that we keep our meeting for the city council to talk about it next week. So we have a clear direction by the end of the month. So those, if we're going to order one or we're going to order two, that we can have that take place.
right. I wasn't implying that Brian and I would decide
No.
anything. I just want him to let me know what they decide so we
Yeah.
can, okay.
Yeah, and I didn't
s-
take it like that.
Okay, I see this yellow hand up here in Larry's ear. So
Yeah.
Linda or Larry, somebody
Yeah.
needs.
I just had a thought, and I realize this might be difficult, but maybe Chief Pickering could help us a little, or even the vendors. It would help to know, hey, if you don't buy ambulance to, let's say, and you wait 2 years, or you wait a year and a half till things are more clear and we know the direction we're headed, right? What is the difference in cost? I mean, there's all kinds of numbers out there, right? But I'm sure that they could give us a fairly educated guess as to, hey, delay means possibly this much more cost when you buy that ambulance.
Yeah.
I think that would help. If we're talking the 50% increase, well, that's pretty significant. I mean, I don't know what that increase is.
Yeah.
I just offer that for what
He
it's
gave us
Pickering
some
does have
numbers. He
Okay.
does have the numbers.
Okay. Then
So we do understand a couple of things about that. There's
Yeah.
a 15%, 10 plus 5, 15% discount available if we get onto this order where Edgerton's at, based on late last fall, early winter prices, discount on that price. Without that discount at all, and otherwise ordering an ambulance on our own today, there's an increased list price on that vehicle. So not only would we not get a 15% discount, but we'd realize that today's price, which would be at some higher level than that as well. And so we do have some perspective on that. And we also understand that they've told, the manufacturers told Edgerton, it's an 18-month waiting for an ambulance.
Yeah. Well, and again, I'm thinking of the townships as well, not only the town of Milton in the city, but the other townships. It could make a big difference for them to have so communicating that information to them, hey, if we delay, this is possibility of cost increase. So it's always hard,
Right.
For what it's worth, I think it's critical if we can and find the ARPA funds or whatever works for us as a group to buy that one ambulance for sure. That's just my opinion, because I think regardless of how if and when we become part of the fire district, or if and when it goes back to a different model of operation, there may be some potential down the road of a shared services of EMS. And then you're going to need that extra ambulance, not only for the existing department, however that might look, but in maybe doing joint services with surrounding areas. So I'm just opening the door for thinking a little outside the box. I apologize for that outside the box thought, but it might be worth considering in terms of buying the one ambulance for sure. So
Yeah,
So
we can certainly wait on this and do the smart thing, whatever that's perceived to be. But the Edgerton model, the expectation is that there'll be new ambulances coming on and disposing of one of the two we have now, retaining a total fleet of 3 between 2 stations. So that's the model anticipated by Edgerton at some point eventually.
Okay, so like I said, we'll follow up with the meetings next week. I don't know if the town board plans to meet on Monday, but the one for the city council is Tuesday.
We don't have it scheduled at this time. I wanted to have this discussion. We do intend to meet next week and have this discussion, yes.
All right, sounds good. The next, we have the fire chief's report. Jeremy.
We have item
uh,
6. Item 6.
But, oh no, okay, I'm sorry. I missed new business. I'm all screwed up now. Okay, discussion and possible action regarding guidelines for fire commission lawyer contact. Last time when we met, it was suggested that we define when it would be appropriate for the contact in contacting our lawyer. Who should be able to contact the lawyer? How often we should be able to contact the lawyer, and any other guidelines. There was some question about should anyone on the fire commission, as well as in the fire department, be able to contact the lawyer that we have assigned to us? Should they have to go through if it's in addition to the fire department, should they have to go through the fire commission? If it's the fire commission, should it just be the fire leadership at that time? Or should anyone, I mean, what are your thoughts? Does anyone have any strong feeling? I mean, keep in mind, we're paying for this each time that she's contacted.
And for those that don't understand, we have a separate attorney on staff, Brooke Joes or Brooke Joes.
Yeah, JOOS.
Yeah. And the initial intent was to use this service and fund it out of the fire budget if it was directly related to internal needs. So maybe Jeremy isn't as familiar with that intent or that resource. So certainly people like Kelsey or somebody else, I don't know, but those that might not be aware of why there's another attorney.
I think that we need to keep our contacts to the chairperson.
Agree.
I think that any discussions that we have with our attorney needs to come out of the results of this committee first. It's just my own opinion.
I agree with that. This is Larry, and just then Jeremy and or other leadership of the department would work through the chairman or chairperson for that, for that type of need, if that makes sense.
Is that all right with you, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think so. If there's any, I would think the commission would be definitely involved with that. And then we could pick on who contacts a lawyer for that situation.
For example, something did come up this year having to do with hourly pay. A question about was there a level of hourly pay that then needed to be given overtime? So that was asked, and it needed to be looked in legally. So we needed to contact Brooke to investigate that. We needed to do it before the next commission meeting. So we would not have had time to wait until the commission meeting. Well, I guess we could have, but we were trying to investigate, research it before the next commission meeting. So the chief and I each contacted a lawyer. He went through the Janesville lawyer. I went through Brooke, so we would have more data to go on before we brought it back to our next. I don't know if you remember discussing this earlier in the fall. And that would be an example of something that we would use Brooke for in looking at the legality behind a decision. And they did. They investigated it through the state of Wisconsin and also went through the different cases that had been argued for anything associated with payment according to hours and so forth. Does that seem appropriate to you?
Sounds like.
Well, and the only other time that we, that I could think of, unless there's, I'm just gonna think that everything's just gonna go smoothly here. And that would be when we hear the final decision from Edgerton and we start doing what we legally have to do for the legality of this commission.
Yeah.
Other than that, I can't see anything, hopefully,
Right.
that we'll need her for.
Right. And, and a lot of that may end up in the city's lap and the township's laps rather than the commission's laps. We'll have to wait and see.
Yes.
So, okay. All right. That should clarify it enough. It's just that the question has come up a couple of times and wanted to clarify it.
I'll make a motion that contacting the commission's attorney needs to go through the chair.
Okay.
Second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All approved. Thank you. Now, fire chief's report. Thank you.
I hope everyone can hear me okay. Like I said, the internet tonight at the station's not the greatest. But I'll start off with
Jeremy,
the full-time position.
it might work a little bit better if you just turn your video off. It'll help the audio a little bit.
Is that any better?
Yeah.
Yes, I think so.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
we'll go with that. All right, you all know what I look like already. So, I'll start with the hiring process for the new full-time position. It went pretty well. We had 6 applicants. Unfortunately, one of those dropped out before we did the interview process. We interviewed the 5 applicants, and I think that all of them did really well. I think that any of those 5 would have been a great hire for the fire department. But at this time, we went ahead and offered Mr. Howard Green the position for the new full-time spot. He is currently a firefighter EMT and soon will be an MPO for the fire department. He has been with us 5 years. I think he'll be a great asset to the team. Does anybody have any questions on the hiring process?
The only thing I want to point out is that I hope you caught that he's an EMT and not a paramedic. And I don't mean that to be critical. It's just that, I think that we need to keep in mind that as we move forward, we're going to continue to have both levels of service within the fire department. And we need to recognize that those areas are covered at all times. Jeremy, can you explain that to everyone?
I can do that a little bit. Obviously, if paramedic is available, that is preferred. We run a paramedic service. The more paramedics we have, obviously the better service we can provide. Unfortunately, we didn't have any paramedics that made it with the process. But in the future, we're going to definitely be pushing for that.
Okay.
I have a question.
And before we move forward too, I didn't see your face here, Howie, so I'm still going to introduce you, even though you're hiding down here in the corner. We would like to welcome you and hope that you will contact us if you have any questions, but welcome you to Milton. Or
Yes.
at least into this position, so.
Yes.
You're still here, aren't you?
I've been tuning in at work, so.
Okay, all right, well, welcome.
I'm curious, does Howard have a goal of paramedic certification or is that not in his window?
I didn't hear you, Brian. What did you say?
Does Howard have a goal of becoming paramedic certified or is that just not in his window?
I haven't quite asked him yet, so I hate to put him on the spot, but since he's here, we could probably ask him.
It's definitely something that's possibly in my future. We'll kind of see where the cards fall, but obviously there's a high need for paramedics in the service right now, just all across the board. So definitely something I've been looking into.
And that's why I asked whether it was a goal of yours. Because we have a need.
Yeah. Okay,
You got the job anyway.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yes, you do, but congratulations, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, back to you, Jeremy.
All right. Well, for the month of December, we had approximately 118 calls, very busy month. And some of the training that the crews did that month was rural water supply, cold water and ice rescues, forcible entry, and then continuing education with Mercy Health for the EMT recertifications. Again, it's been a very, very busy year. We finished off the year with 1,350 calls, right on the head. And I believe that's probably the most calls that we've ever had. So I don't see it getting any slower. So we have to be prepared for that. I think that's all I got.
Okay.
Thank you,
Okay.
Jeremy.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was writing.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Do we have a president's report? No? Okay. All right,
I don't think so, but
go ahead.
I do know that the association voted to pay for some new furniture for the full timers. So I think that's much appreciated.
Great. All right.
We also got 5, I believe, new mattresses donated from Simmons.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
Nice.
wow.
Wow, nice. And you're going to be giving those out to people? No, I'm just kidding.
I think they've already replaced the bed. It's been a couple of years. Simmons donated them. I think it was maybe 3 years ago. They wear out pretty quickly. I mean,
Oh,
so
yeah.
they were
I'm
kind
sure.
enough to donate all new ones last week to us. So that was very nice.
That is nice.
Yeah.
Super.
Really. Really. Are there other things that you guys are in desperate need of that we put out for, that we can kind of suggest to people if they want to donate?
I know we just did got some new dishes and pots and pans. They wear out pretty quickly. We go through a lot of dish knives and stuff like that. So yearly, those are good to be replaced. Any type of kitchen stuff that includes towels are always necessary for these guys too, because they're, we got 4 of them staying there all the time. They eat all their meals there. So things like that are always
Right.
appreciated.
Okay. All right, well, if you think of anything, send us a note. We'll kind of post it.
Mhm.
That would be helpful for people when they think of donating and, keeps people in the idea of what to share. Thank you. Okay, at this time, if someone would like to read the motion for number 9.
Move to convene in a closed session pursuant to statute 19.85, term 1E, considering employment, promotion, compensation, and performance evaluation of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility regarding staffing positions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Right?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll move on to general items. Anyone have an item to bring up?
I do have a general item. I just would like to remind everyone during these bitter cold days to be aware of your space heaters. Check them out. And I kind of would like to see us put something on the sign in the fire department there, I don't know how you could use your space heaters safely. With what we've been hearing on the news, I just feel like it's maybe something that we need to remind people.
You can for sure do that. That's a great idea.
Thanks.
Hey, anything else? Anything coming up? Okay. Adjournment.
I would move we adjourn.
Second.
I anticipate being gone on February 16th for a few days. Just an FYI.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next meeting is February 16th. At this time, it's Zoom, given the current status. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?